Okay, we are reading Chuju's House, and this is chapter 9. As miserable as I was on the train, I did not want my journey to end. Rather than face Hana, I would have been content to hurtle along forever. When the train reached our village, I had to force myself to get out. A soft rain was falling, but I hardly noticed it. As I walked from the village to Hana's house, I was seeking an excuse to explain the taking of Kwan's yuan. I'd made a promise to Kwan to keep a secret, but I did not see how I could face Hana. The sight of our crops shook me from my thoughts. No one had tended the land. I had been gone less than 3 days, and already there was bugs on the squash. The weeds stretched higher than the radishes, and the sweet potato vines were choking the cabbage heads. I had been dragging my feet, but after seeing how the crops had been neglected, I walked faster, afraid that Hana was ill and had taken to her bed. It would have been usual for me to walk through the door without knocking, for it was my house as well, but now I knocked, and while I waited, the speech I had rehearsed flew away. It was a new Hana who opened the door. She was more stooped, her face thinner, her hair uncombed, her voice harsh. "Why did you come back? There is no place for you here, and no money left for you to steal." Her words were worse than a slap. "There is a little money left," I said, handing it to her. "I used only what I had to." "If your family needed money, why did you not come to me?" Hana asked. "I would have given you all you asked for. Why did you steal when Kwan worked so hard?" "There is no place in my house for you." "Hana, the field is unattended. Let me take care of it. I can sleep in the courtyard." "The field is nothing to me. I was only keeping it for Kwan, and for you if Kwan did not return. I no longer care for the field." My heart leapt at the words, "and for you." All the time we had been working together and living together, Hana had looked upon me as her own child, someone to whom she might give the land. I saw all that I had lost. I was crying now, and worse, so was Hana. The truth shut inside me, tore at my heart like a wild dog desperate to escape. Kwan had warned me that learning he had been arrested would destroy his mother, but what could be worse than this? Just as the wild dog was ready to spring out, Hana shut the door. The journey with little sleep and much worry had tired me. I longed for a place to lie down. The courtyard was forbidden to me. I thought of Ling, but Hana might have told Ling's parents, and Ling had promised to say nothing of the real purpose of my journey. The Zangs would be no more willing than Hana to have me in their home. I resigned myself to spending the night stretched out in some field in the rain and darkness. Even Ling's water buffalo has a roof over its head, I thought to myself. At the thought of the buffalo, I began to climb the hill. It was nearly dark. I slipped from shadow to shadow, keeping well away from the Zang's house. 3 sides of the stable were closed to the weather. The stable roof was thatched with rice straw. I heard the buffalo moving about. Though his large size frightened me, I told myself that Ling said he was a great baby. I crept inside and was relieved to see that the brute was tethered to a stake, so a part of the stable was out of his reach. I sank down on a heap of rice straw, the smell and the warmth of the animal all about me, and in a moment I was asleep. When I awoke at the crow of the gongjees, which gongjees is a rooster, I saw a line of light along the horizon. The water buffalo grunted and stirred in his sleep. Hastily, I ran from the stable and climbed down the hill. Minutes later, I was in Hana's field, taming the sweet potato vines, pulling weeds, picking the bugs off the squash. I worked all morning, but Hana never came. At noon, I ate some radishes and raw cabbage, worried that even the little I put into my mouth was an act of theft. By afternoon, the field was as it should be, and I decided I must leave. It seemed that no sooner did I find a house for myself than I had to run away. But what else could I do? Hana had said there was no place for me. I had started on my way when something made me decide to say goodbye to Ling. I started up the hill. At one house I passed, I saw a family in the courtyard. How I longed to be a part of such a family again, to have a house to live in, to sit at a table and lie in a bed and have someone with whom I could talk. Ling was in the orchard, a pail of dirt on either end of his shoulder pole. The moment he saw me, he dropped the pole and ran to me. "Choo-choo, I'm so glad to see you. What trouble have you made for yourself? My parents wanted Hana to send the police after you, but she wouldn't do it. I kept my promise to say nothing, but now you will have told Hana the truth. Is Kwan free? Is he coming home?" "No. He will never leave the city. It is like a box of toys to him. He cares nothing for the land." Ling shook his head, and little for his mother. "I think he cares for his mother. He sends her money, and he worried that she might learn what happened to him. I was not fond of Kwan. How could I be when he had made me so miserable? But I saw that he had been caught by the city. If he had to choose between my misfortune and his mother's, why should he not choose mine? Chuju, have you told Hana the truth?" "No, I promised Kwan I would say nothing about his being in the detention center. He will never come back, and Hana would always be worrying that he would be arrested again. I can't do that to her. But Ling, she sent me away last night." "Sent you away? Away? It was raining. Where did you sleep?" I couldn't help smiling. "I slept in your stable beside the beast." Are you to spend the rest of your life with a water buffalo? Hana loves Kwan, but she loves you as well. When Kwan left, she still worked in the paddy and cared for her garden. When you left, she shut herself into the house. I wanted to tell her the truth, but I had promised to say nothing until you returned. Now you are back, and now I'm going to tell the truth. Ling started down the hill. I ran after him. Wait, what of my promise to Kwan? That was your promise. I made no such promise. Ling marched down the hill. I had to run to keep up with him. The whole time I was begging him to wait, but he would not listen. He only marched on. At Ling's loud knock, Hana opened the door and came out into the courtyard. When she saw me standing behind Ling, she said, There is nothing to be said. It is better for you, Ling, to keep away from such a girl as that. Hana, Ling said, you must listen. You do not know the truth. There is no truth to learn from such a person, Hana said. All but a few of Kwan's hard-earned yuan gone for who knows what foolishness. I would never have thought it of her. In one breath, Ling said, the money went to pay a fine so Kwan could be released from a detention center. Hana sunk down upon a chair and stared at us. What are you saying? Kwan is in Shanghai. Chuju went to her family. No, Ling insisted. Kwan was arrested because he had no residence permit. Chuju made the trip all the way to Shanghai to pay the fine with Kwan's money. Hana looked at me. Is that true? I nodded. But how is it that you knew this, Chuju, and I didn't? Kwan put it in his letter and told me to say nothing. I didn't read that part to you. Kwan said to take his yuan and bring them to the detention center in Shanghai so that his fine could be paid. You traveled to Shanghai by yourself? If such a thing was asked, Kwan should have asked it of me. I dared to put my hand on Hana's, and a great weight was lifted when her hand grasped mine. Hana, Kwan thought the trip would be too much for you. And would he have a girl of 16 wander alone in such a city? Why didn't he come back with you? He will be arrested again in no time. I felt Hana's hand tremble in mine. Kwan knew you would worry. That's why he wouldn't let me tell you. But Hanan, Kwan says he will not make the same mistake again. You must write to him to come home. Kwan will not come home. Hana, let me tell you what the city is like for Kwan. He knows every part of it as we know our paddy and as Ling knows his orchard. This city is not for me or for you or for Ling, but it is full of wonders and very beautiful by night. Kwan sees only the beauty. He will never come back. Ling said, I'm going to tell my parents the truth. I'll stop back later. Before you ask Chuju more questions, Hana, you should give her something to eat and let her clean herself. She smells like a water buffalo. Laughing, Ling hurried away. Hana quickly put a bowl of rice and some hard-boiled eggs before me. As she boiled water for tea, she said, eat first, and then you must tell me how you made such a trip and how my son is. I told of the train trip and the woman who helped me, saying nothing of how the woman's son-in-law had been arrested for speaking the truth. I told her of the underground train and the noodle shop and the places Kwan had taken me in the city. There were tears in her eyes. I see that I may never think of my son coming home. After a bit, she was calmer. Can you forgive me, Chuju? The words I said to you yesterday were terrible. I deceived you, I said. It was Kwan who deceived me, she replied. Now let us have nothing but truth between us. Tell me why you came here and why you were wandering about alone. Who are your family and why are you separated from them? I wanted the truth between us as well. I told Hana the story of my parents and my grandmother and of Hua. I could not let them sell my sister. Hana groaned and took me in her arms. Terrible, terrible. But Chuju, what must your mother and father be feeling? At least I know where Kwan is. You must go tell them and tell them that you will always have a home here. I shook my head. I cannot make you, Chuju, but you must begin to think about it. The day must come. I did begin to think of it, and a great longing that I put aside came over me. Even if there was a son now, if I went back just for a short time, there would be no question of anyone discovering I was another daughter. I would come and go quickly. For nearly 2 years, I had put such thoughts out of my head. I had said to myself that I would never return, that my family was lost to me forever. Once I began to think of returning, I could think of nothing else. Still the months went by, and I did nothing further about such a visit. I worried about leaving Hana, for she grew a little weaker each day. She seldom went into the field now. When Kwan's letters came, she hardly listened to the words he wrote. The money she put aside, no longer counting it. Once she said to me, Chuju, the money is here when you are ready to make the journey home. She sighed. I think you should make the journey, but I'm afraid if you do, you won't come back to me. Hana, I said, this is my home now. The last of the vegetables were harvested, and in March, Ling brought the water buffalo and plowed our field. Here is your friend, Ling said. He tells me he's lonesome at night for his old roommate. After the field was plowed, Ling tied up the beast, and together the oxen said he missed his old roommate because she slept in the hay with him. Remember, she slept in the barn with the oxen?
Just once.
Once, and so he said the oxen misses his roommate. After the field was plowed, Ling tied up the beast, and together we sat beside the field in the shade of a clump of bamboo and ate our lunches. sharing our bean curd and pancakes and gratefully drinking our boiled water. The smell of the new earth was pleasant. A flock of black and white magpies explored the freshly plowed fields for worms. The spring sky was a cloudless blue, and the bamboo leaves barely rustled in the noon air. I had never told Ling the story of my family, but I told him now. At first he listened as if I were telling a story out of a book, hardly believing in the tale. As I told the story, he saw the tears in my eyes, and he believed. Chuju, how you must have loved your sister. But what might have happened to you could have been worse than what might have happened to your sister. No, I had my freedom. No one could have bought and sold me. I might have been hungry, but that would have been the worst of it. You were lucky, he said. There are evil men who kidnap grown women. But tell me, now that you are older, will you go back and see your family? I don't know, I said. Hana is my family now, and she needs me here. If I returned, my grandmother would say I was coming back to make trouble for them. Hua would still be in danger. Chuju, I cannot say I would have done as you did, but I cannot say what you did was wrong. Only how sad your parents must have been to lose such a girl as you. And that is the end of chapter 9.